Hi, friends. Welcome to another edition of the Lovecast. You are listening to episode 136. That's right, episode 136. And we're going to continue our series, which is entitled Five Signs That You Are Under the Influence. Five Signs That You Are Under the Influence, Part 2. Part 2. Guys, how are you? Welcome back to another edition of the Lovecast. And super happy. I'm super happy that you're back, that you're listening. Welcome. I appreciate each one of you that's listening, and recognize that a lot of the folks who do listen to this podcast, I've gotten the privilege of getting to know a little bit, and I'm also recognizing that there's many, many, many folks who listen to this that I have never interacted with or met in person or even exchanged email or messages. So I'd like to remedy that. If you're listening to this podcast, the Lovecast, and we've never had an opportunity to connect or talk, let me encourage you to reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear where you're at, just like where you're in the world or the country that you're listening from. And or let me just put it this way: even if you have contact with me, I always love to stay in contact. So I don't want to limit that to just people who've never contacted me. But if you have not ever contacted me and yet you've been listening to this podcast called the Lovecast with Jamal, let me encourage you to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. But even if you've been a long time listener or a frequent listener or, you know, kind of an occasional listener, it doesn't matter. I would really love to hear from you. So send me an email at Jamal, Jamal, at, and then JamalJavanji.com. So my first name at my first and last name.com. So Jamal at JamalJavanji.com. You can send me email there, or you can go to my website. It's probably a little easier, called JamalJavanji.com. And on my website, JamalJavanji.com, you can click the contact button and send me a message there as well. So either way, I'll get it. But I'd love to hear from you. And anyway, thank you guys for reaching out the last few weeks. Let me know you're enjoying the podcast. We are in our series, part 2 of our series, which is 5 signs that you are under the influence or operating under the influence, however you want to put that. Part 2. And this one we're going to talk about part 1. Last time, we talked about part 1, and we went into a little bit of detail of just, the sense of possibility that people have when they are operating under the influence. Instead of seeing obstacles or limitations or a sense of lack, when we are influenced by divine source energy. Okay. And so what I mean by operating under the influence is we are all being influenced by something, every one of us. You'll never lay eyes on a human being, including yourself, that is not operating under the influence. So a lot of times, and we talked about this, I'm not going to rehash everything, that we talked about last week's episode in part 1, but we did. If you have not listened to that, let me encourage you to go back and listen to that episode, because it's a really important episode. And what we kind of lay out there is just that there's really 2 predominant frameworks or centers of gravity that we can live our life from and operate from. One center of gravity is the egoic, or the source of ego. Ego is basically just the summation of our experiences in life, the way that we have, it's our self construct, the construct that was shaped unconsciously and consciously by our parents and our family dynamic, our religious beliefs, our society, how, the norms and expectations of society and those around us. I mean, that all of these, and then just trauma, all of these form our ego or egoic nature. And that is really just the identity that we have of ourself. Now, the ego isn't good or bad. It's just a construct. It's a tool. It's not who we are. But most people, before they begin the awakening process, most people are only aware of their ego, and they have so self-identified with their ego that it just seems like them. They have identified with it. So to them, their ego, they don't even see an ego. It's just who they are. But when you start to wake up from that illusion and start to realize, no, this is just a construct. This is just a summation of my experiences and traumas and beliefs, but there's someone else present. And that, I would say, is your highest self, your truest self. It is the self that's beyond the ego. Another example I like to use is if you were the star, let's say there was a movie about your life and you were playing the starring role. While the ego is the character in the movie, but your true and highest self is the actor playing the character. Does that make sense? So if you are the star of your own movie and about your life, you are the character, which is your egoic nature, but the actor playing you through the ego is your truest and highest self. So when we awaken up, when we wake up to the influence of our highest and truest self, that would be when we wake up to our divine nature, our divine identity. Okay. When we're under the influence of that self, then we're influenced by divine power, the divine self, which is, I believe, our truest and highest self. Okay. So life's about waking up. And then obviously as a life coach and in my coaching work, a lot of my work is helping people become very aware of their construct, their egoic construct. Not that it's bad. It's just, it's only unhelpful if it's limiting us from awakening to our truest and highest self. And when we shift our seat of awareness out of the egoic nature and into our highest and truest self, our most divine self, that's when life gets fun. That's when life becomes much more easy and much more powerful, and we become limitless. And so part one, a sign that we are waking up to, or that we are operating under the influence, I should say, of our divine nature, is that um, we begin to approach life and the challenges or situations in life from a place of possibility and not limitation. Okay, so that's in a nutshell the summary of last week's podcast episode. But in this week's podcast episode, in part two, um, we want to talk about what the second sign is. Okay. So we're in this series of 5 signs where each week we're going to be talking about one of the signs until we get to all 5 signs. But this week we're going to talk about the second sign, and that second sign that we are operating. So here's how you know if you are operating under the influence of divine source energy, our highest and truest self. Sign number 2 is that you begin. Are you ready for this? You have a pen and pencil? You might want to get a writing utensil and write this down. Okay, sign number 2. Here it is. Sign number 2 that you are operating under the influence of your divine self, your highest self, is that you move from being a thermometer to a thermostat. Isn't that good? Think about that for a moment. You move from being operating more as a thermometer to a thermostat. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's what does a thermometer do? Yeah, a thermometer, primarily what a thermometer does is it simply tells you the temperature. It reacts to the external environment. If it's cold, it'll tell you how cold it is. If it's hot, it'll tell you how hot it is. It'll tell you the temperature of the external room. It reacts and just reads the temperature. And honestly, before we wake up to our inherent power, most of us are kind of like that. We're just operating to whatever the environment is. So if we're in a toxic environment, we kind of take on that energy and we're affected by it. We're trying to react to it or survive under it, right? And if we're in a positive environment, we may feel good when we're around positive energy, positive environment. But a thermometer simply will just tell you, it'll just react to the energy or the temperature of the room. Okay. So again, I'm using this as a metaphor, but this is again, most people are whatever, they take on the energy of whatever the environment is. And we see this today, right? Everyone talks about how bad of a year 2020 is, right? 2020 is such this horrible year. It's, we have this pandemic, we have all these riots, we have all this political division. Obviously, it's an election year. Probably not a coincidence. All this is happening on an election year, right? So you listen to me for a while, you'll know that I don't easily buy into narratives. Okay. And so the narrative is there on purpose, and the timing is no coincidence. Okay. So it's not just random or coincidental. It is, that is the purpose. So, most people are really not aware of these dynamics. They just react to external stimulus, and they don't really think about it. They don't really think through or observe or ask questions, or they just kind of react. And that's what we're seeing in our society. No judgment there. It's just evidence of a need for us to wake up a little bit. Okay. So most people are operating as thermometers, right? So there's certain narratives that get thrown out into the society, and then people react to it. So we've seen two major narratives get thrown out into our society, and for a lot of the world as well. But it's very heavy here in the United States. Two main narratives. Okay, one narrative is fear. Everyone's been afraid of the pandemic, the viruses. Where people are afraid, and that's a narrative. And then people have become outraged. People have become outraged by certain injustices we've seen in the media, and then of course the response to the pandemic has created outrage by people who are suffering because of the some of the heavy-handed responses. So fear and outrage are the narrative. So most people are just reacting to that. They're reacting, just like a thermometer. They're just going to tell you the temperature. If it's fear, the thermometer will read fear. If it's outrage, the thermometer will read outrage. Okay. So most of our society, lots and lots of people have been acting as thermometers. So my question is, where's the thermostat been? Now I'm again talking about this on a broad scale, corporate scale, but this also works on an individual level as well. So we have the ability to act as a thermometer in individual lives, in our own households, right? Do you live with somebody who's toxic? Do you live with somebody who's difficult? Yeah. Are you a thermometer or are you a thermostat? It's the same thing. So if you look at our culture and our society, we know who the thermometers are. It's a lot of the populace, a lot of the everyday masses of people, right? But who are the thermostats in our culture, in our society? Yeah. Unfortunately, the thermostats that we have had are what I would call the mainstream media and the politicians. Yeah, some of the politicians are just powerless, and they're operating as thermometers. But some of the politicians have been operating as thermostats. So a thermostat is what do you do with a thermostat, right? You set the temperature. The thermostat doesn't react to the temperature; it sets it. It's declaring what the temperature of the room will be, right? Isn't that what a thermostat does? Yeah, you just declare it. So, in our culture, in our society, we have the media that operates as thermostats. They are attempting to set the temperature, right? They're attempting to set the temperature of the environment. And also, um, we see this at some political levels as well. Maybe we see some talking heads on TV, some scientists on TV, different people on TV. They get on TV and they set the temperature as a thermostat would set a temperature in a room, right? And then the thermometers will then read that temperature, right? Yeah. See that's how it works. So when you're operating in under your own power, your inherent power, I should say, the power of your truest and highest self, what I would also call our divine self, we move from just being reactive as a thermometer, just telling the temperature, to a thermostat. We start to become and operate as a thermostat, as someone who sets the temperature, right? So it's really interesting. First and foremost, when you shift, most of us were trained to operate as thermometers. We're just telling the temperature, we're affected by everything. But as you start to wake up to your own power, first place that you start to wake up to your own power, most people want to have influence, and they want to try to tell everybody else how to live their life. But I always find, and we do this in coaching, we start to focus on, if you want to become a thermostat, and not simply be a thermometer. What we're going to learn to do is we're going to learn how to be a thermostat for our own life. We're going to learn how to set the temperature for our own life, instead of reacting as a thermometer to all the events happening around us. So like if certain things happen, I'm cold one day and then I'm hot another day because of other things are happening. Like I'm happy or I'm sad, right? That's what a thermometer does. It'll read sad if certain criteria are happening, and it'll read happy if other things are happening, right? So what we want to do is we want to stop being so reactive, and we want to learn how to get a hold of our own state of being. And when we learn how to do that, and again, it's all part of the coaching work, but when you learn how to access your state of being and tap into your highest and truest self, start to tap into your power. And this is a practice. There are things you can do, tools, and it's subtle work, but it's very, and by subtle, I don't mean small or insignificant. No, I mean significant, but it's subtle. It's the subtle daily work. What it allows you to do is it allows you to tap into your highest, your truest self. It allows you to tap into your power. And as you tap into your power, you become, and I've heard this time and time again from the people I work with. It's amazing. They say it all the time. I'm becoming less reactive. They're observing that, like, wow, the things I used to really react to, I no longer react to. And I'm becoming much less reactive. And I'm starting to learn how to actually move into my power as someone who's a thermostat. I'm beginning, and what happens is it starts to affect their family. It starts to affect the relationships they are in, maybe their work environment, maybe they're in their relationship with their significant other, with their children, no, it doesn't matter. Like they start to notice that other people are affected in a positive way because they're starting to become more of a thermostat versus a thermometer. They're setting the temperature, but that happens externally as it happens. It can only happen externally when it first happens internally, right? You start to set the temperature of your own being. So it doesn't mean you're not affected, you know? So what happens if you're a thermostat and it gets really cold? The thermostat responds, right? Yeah, it'll kick on the heat if it gets really cold. So my wife and I, we live up in the mountains here in Southern California, and we're up about over a little over 5,000 feet in it. So we get all the seasons. It gets cold. We get snow in the winter, and I love it because it's very cozy up here. It's a little cabin. It's like a little cabin. We're surrounded by trees. I love it. I personally love it. And in the winter, though, it gets cold. So the thermostat, right, will sense that and react to that by kicking on the heat. Yeah. So it's not like the thermostat doesn't do anything. It's not that the thermostat's not affected by the external environments. It reacts to it, but it reacts to it, or I should say it responds to it. But it responds by setting the temperature and then causing a chain. A thermostat causes a chain, creates the environment by causing a chain of reactions to happen, right? By setting the temperature. But there's a temperature setting, which then that mechanism causes heat to kick on. Or if it's the summertime and it's very hot outside, the thermostat sets the temperature at a certain degree. And when it gets above that, the thermostat causes another set of chain reactions to happen to make it cooler, right? So that's how it works. So let me ask you a question. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. When you start to operate under the influence of your highest and truest self, your divine self, you become a thermostat, setting the culture, setting the temperature of your own state of being first, and then you begin to do that wherever you go and whatever situation you're in. You are the thermostat that sets the tone. So here's a question I'd like to ask you. What is the normative way for you to operate? Are you the temperature setter? Are you the thermostat? Or are you the thermometer? That's the first question. Do you just react to external stimulus? Are you affected by the external world that's happening all around you? Do you get affected? And by affected, I mean, do you react to all these things going on around you? Or do you find yourself really more plugged in and glued into your internal state? And do you maintain a high state of being internally, no matter what is going on around you? It's a question. Yeah, it's just a question to ask. So I'm convinced if you are a thermostat, if you're operating as a thermostat, you will set a temperature that is life-giving and encouraging, and makes it just for a very comfortable and warm and inviting and healthy environment, not only for yourself but for those around you, if you are indeed operating as a thermostat. But if you find that you feel that you're in a toxic environment, or things around you are toxic and you're reacting to the things that are toxic, and then you're trying to be a thermostat but yet you just find yourself constantly in reactive mode to situations, then I would say you are not operating as a thermostat. You may think you are, but you're just a thermometer. Yeah, because if you were a thermostat, you would inherently and naturally set the temperature that would be a temperature that's conducive for love, peace, rest, empowerment, life. This is true to our nature as people. That's what we long for. We long to be safe. We long to be free. We long to be significant, to live significant lives. We long to be loved and to love. That's natural. We long to grow as people. We long to contribute to the wider world. These are all true of us at our core being. So when we are living in under the influence, in accordance to, under the influence of our highest and most truest and divine self, we set that temperature as a thermostat internally first for ourselves. And by default, we begin to do that for the folks in our life and the environments we're in. Okay. And I know it's not just seamless. Sometimes we go back and forth, like we talked about last week. There are times that we operate from our egoic self, which is not bad. It's just it's just not it's our story. When we operating from the story, we may slip into the energy of being a thermostat, or a thermometer, just being affected. But as we learn how to access our truest and highest state, we become a thermometer, setting the culture and temperature for our own state of being, a culture and temperature of health, a culture and temperature of peace, a culture and temperature of patience. And this is the temperature. So the question is, are you known for being a thermostat that sets the temperature according to love and peace and life and health and abundance? Or are you known for being a thermometer that's constantly reacting to all the negative external stimulus in the world? What are you known for? It's just a question to ask. What do you experience? May we today wake up to our inherent power. And as we do, may we become thermostats. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we could be the thermostats for our culture, not the media, not the corporate media that only creates things rooted in fear or outrage for their own deep, other interests? Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we wouldn't, that those would not be, wouldn't it be nice if we could become the thermostats, not the media? What if we could be the thermostats that actually creates true journalism, true media? We haven't had that in a long time in this country, but what if they could actually be affected by the culture and energy of the people in this country, which are empowered and operating as thermostats, not just thermometers so easily manipulated? Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, I think we're headed there. I really do. I think this year is helping a lot of us wake up to the undue influence and control we've allowed institutions like the corporate media to have on people. Yeah. We are waking up to our own inherent power. That gives us the power to be a thermostat. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice in your relationships? Instead of always reacting to dysfunction in your relationships, that you could actually start to set the tone, not by force or dictating, or just by being at peace in your own state of being. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, isn't that what you would like? I know that's what makes life fun, exciting, hopeful, because instead of just reacting to external stimulus and scrambling, we are actually learning how to be a thermostat where we can set the tone and culture to what we want, right? Just like getting into a nice shower where you can set the temperature to whatever you want it to be. And then you can enjoy the shower as opposed to being traumatized by it being freezing cold or too hot, right? You can set it to what you want it to be. Wouldn't it be nice if life could be that way? Well, it can. It can. And actually, I believe we were designed to be in control of the thermostat of our state of being. Yeah, we get to take back control of our own thermostats, away from the fear mongers and the media, away from the outrage stirrers, right? We're not victims. We're not victims. We have the power to create our life. Nobody can take that from you. No government leader, nobody, nobody in your life. We are the only ones that will ever have the power to create our own life, our own culture, and our own state of being. In order to do that, you have to become a thermostat. Yeah, it's a sign. It just shows you when you start operating under the influence of divine source energy, you become a thermostat. Yeah. We'll leave it there for today, but I hope this speaks to you. If you have any comments, thoughts, questions, if you would like some help in the new year, I know we're headed into 2021, a new year. It's a new opportunity to push pause or reset and to move into a whole new life. I'd love to assist you if that's possible. I'm not able to work with everybody, but I will always tell people this. I will always hear you, and I will always listen to you. If you would like some help becoming empowered, taking on the things you've been avoiding, maybe getting clear, maybe clearing trauma, just getting whole, moving into your power. If you'd like some help, and I'm obviously biased because I am a life coach, but I haven't met a person, I have yet to meet a person alive that does not need inner work. We all do, because we've all been affected, every single person. So for some people that's therapy, and for some it's coaching. I am a life coach. I'm not a therapist. There is a bit of overlap though. But if coaching is something that that's something that you would like to explore in the new year, I'd be happy to at least talk to you about it. And if I'm able to help you, we can explore that. But if I'm not, if I don't have the ability, time wise or just to fit wise, then I always hear you, and I will try my best to get you the help that you need. I will never just not talk to somebody. Okay. So just reach out to me, Jamal at jamaljavanji.com. You can always send me an email there. Let me know that, hey, I'm thinking about coaching, or I'm exploring coaching. This might be the 2021 year, may be the year for you to invest in yourself, to move into your highest and truest self, as opposed to just living unempowered and reactive in your egoic state. Okay. So I want you to think about that. Again, you can send me email there. You can go to my website, jamaljavanji.com. You can contact me there. There's more information about coaching there always. But it's really important. And even if you don't do coaching, it doesn't really matter what avenue. I mean, if you have an intention to live an awakened life, to be awake, then I firmly believe that the universe, God, however you want to put this, will make it abundantly clear what your next steps are for empowerment. Okay. So, It's not just coaching. It's not just these other things. I mean, you will know what the next step is. But let me encourage you to set the intention for this next year, for 2021, to begin to wake up, to become under the influence of your highest, truest, most powerful divine self. Okay. Because that's where that's when you begin to create life as opposed to just reacting to it. Okay. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. Guys, thank you again for listening. If you would like, and let me encourage you to do this. It really helps the podcast. Please go to, you can go to iTunes, Apple iTunes, subscribe to the podcast. If you have not yet subscribed, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, and leave a review, rate it and review us on iTunes. That really helps immensely. Let me encourage you to do that if you haven't done that. And if you'd like to get on my mailing list, if you go to my website, jamaljavanji.com, and scroll to the bottom, you can put your email address in there and just click submit and you'll get on my mailing list. Okay. Anyway, until next time, take care. Thank you for listening. All right. Goodbye.